together. So I'm extremely impressed by that. As you probably know, next year they're going to be parents will be allowed to appeal health and social care. Though it's a 2-year trial, it's probably here to stay. It's probably as a sort of one-track route to appeal. So I think just in terms of what I've heard, I'm quite impressed. I'm very impressed that you've actually got 100% between, I don't know, any local authority.
There's 2 in London.
Two.
One of them.
Who's
Okay.
the other one?
I can't remember.
Who cares about them anyway?
Yeah. I would say 200 compared to the figures of other local authorities is not much. And I think, you might think, actually I know authorities who've got much more. And
200.
Did you say 200 outstanding?
We've got
to
200
transfer?
outstanding.
Yeah.
Just under actually now.
Yeah.
Which we could do by March.
But all of them have started, and if you work back, you'd have to have started.
Are you actually outsourcing them?
No.
Well, that's even more than an achievement.
The quality's poor if you have.
Exactly, and that's actually because lots of local authorities are taking the shortcut route by outsourcing them and just kind of ticking the box. Yes.
Getting loads of tribunals.
Yeah. So I think I'm quite impressed, and I was also just kind of saying support. Though I'm sort of still coming sort of independently, but the pressures, the budgetary pressures, can't be sort of underestimated because what the Senate reform has done, and you sort of hit the nail on the head by sort of 16 to 25. That creates a whole new group of pupils that now the local authority are responsible for. And actually, the whole idea is that there's a theory that EHC plans shouldn't be for life, but in fact, in practice, they're actually very hard to cease. And there's kind of legislation and case law which is coming out, putting lots of pressure on local authorities to make it very hard for them to actually cease at maybe 16, 18. It's just so complicated. I'm hearing of tribunal orders where they're ordering local authorities to fund total social care placements. We've got the Buxton hearing, which redefines what education is. It could be anything now. So potentially the service could be almost funding almost any number of kinds of placements. So I think that I think a lot of sympathy is needed with them in terms of.
So let me get this straight. So basically, it's not only widening out, but also when I met you, the advice that seemed to be given, but correct me if I was wrong, it was quite early on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
But it was that if anyone appealed, they would almost certainly get the service.
Yeah. I mean, statistically, when they're at the refusal to assess stage, statistically, I think that typical scenario, local authority refuses to assess, parents appeal to the tribunal, statistically around 80-90%, most local authorities they concede, because basically they know the legal threshold is very strong, and the judge is just going to tell them, just go back and do the assessment and come back if necessary. And so local authorities, they're in a very difficult position because the tension is that, in my opinion, I think the law really protects the young person, which it should, but it puts the local authority in a very difficult. There's no increase of budgetary, there's no increase of budget. So, and they have such a duty to actually fund these placements, whatever the cost.
Okay, thank you for that. That's really helpful. A bit daunting. Are there any questions? I've got Catherine and anyone else? Oh, I can leave mine after. Okay, Lynette. Okay, Paula.
I've got a couple of points. One, the focus should be on the most acute and most needy children, and especially those in the corporate parenting role in a broader sense. I wanted to know whether you felt there was sufficiency of supply within our specialist schools to meet those needs, but also sufficiency within mainstream provision for those that are caught within it, but at a different point in terms of need, and the role that parental advocacy plays in securing that support for the children, and what as a local authority we do to compensate and assure that no child's at a disadvantage if they don't have the same level of advocacy. And then I had a brief point about you've got this threshold for the plan, and parents can advocate and say my child needs a plan, they have special education needs, but they may fall short of that threshold of a plan, and then they fall into the social and medical needs category, and especially when it ties in with our talk about admissions, that has a huge bearing on their ability then to have their first choice of schools. And I wondered whether there was any analysis done on that in terms of the amount of children either with plans or just short of that, so who have applied for school place on social or medical needs, that are in some way, are they treated fairly, or are you finding a disproportionate amount of these children aren't getting their first choices? So I'll leave it there. Those are the questions.
That's quite a few questions
I can probably answer the first two. I can't answer the one about the admissions and social, because that's a criteria Glenn has in the admissions process, but I can't give you any data on that. So that could come to the admissions discussion later. Okay, I think the first question you've asked is, do we have adequate provision in borough in mainstream and special schools for all the needs that occur? I think that's what you've asked. The quick answer to that is no. And we do have to use out borough placements, and that is at a considerable cost. And that is something that we want to address. So we have to write a capital plan for SEND by next March and publish it. And that work is happening at the moment on that plan. There will be new specialist provision coming on stream. I don't know how much you know about that, but there will be a rebuild to Cherry Gardens opening 2018. There will be a new autistic free school opening in Borough in a couple of years. There are some new resource spaces coming online. There will be a bigger Beerman school. I'm not sure the timescale of that. Is that 2018, 2019? 19. So there's a lot of developments, and that capital plan will outline what our areas of focus are and what we're already doing, what's in that programme. Of course, that programme costs, because there's a capital cost and there's a revenue cost. But over time, it will mean that the in-borough places should take over how we're placing children out borough, and eventually we'll be able to get the cost down, because there won't be as much transport, of course. Children can stay local, be supported in the local community, they can learn independence locally. It's all round better. So that's what we're working on that, but that isn't going to be a quick fix. That's just a couple of years away for some of those schools to open and come on stream. We've also got 2 new nurseries coming in as provisions too, one in the autistic school and one in Cherry Gardens. So there's that happening. Does that answer?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
The advocacy for young people as well as parents is tricky, because when a child gets to 16, in a sense they are, the code says that they should actually be making decisions about their future and their plans. Of course, the big issue for parents have had, understandably, a child that's very dependent on them, that they have to protect and nurture, that's got more needs than your average young person. That's hard for a parent to let go and let the young person take over. And also sometimes their ability to do that is
mental capacity.
Exactly. So we do mental capacity assessments in social care as and when needed. And there are advocacy services out there for young people, and SciAS will support that as well. But it's a conflict at times.
Just to pick up on the maintained school point, I would say that we've got our local authority maintained schools, and many of the academies do an absolutely brilliant job at upskilling their staff, keeping children in school. Helen described earlier the challenges, but actually our head teachers and our teachers want to keep those the children who should be, quite rightly, in mainstream schools that have special education needs, they want to keep them there and they want to do their best. We have got a growing number of children and young people with highly complex needs who really need very specialist provision. And although we're trying to grow our provision in borough, those very high-end specialist places are few and far between. So I think that's going to be a gap that's going to take longer to address or bring closer to home.
Okay, well, no, thanks. Okay, Kath and then Lynette.
A couple of things. Shirley, you said twice or 3 times that you deal with 0 to 18. What happens to the 19 to 25-year-olds in your section? So I feel, well, I'm on a roll. the advocacy thing, I am my daughter's advocate for DFE.
Okay.
So I had to fill in a form and have an interview for that. So if they're on that scheme, then we should recognise that.
Yeah, indeed.
And the pathway to employment, very interesting, but it should also be a pathway to assisted traineeships and apprenticeships as
It's all
well.
part of that.
Yeah. So as soon as you know anything about those, tell me, because I want my daughter on that scheme. But that's it for now.
Right, 19 to 25 is falls within adult services at the moment, but for the last couple of years we have been working on creating 25 service, and we are closer to it now than we've ever been. It's been taking quite a long time, and so by the 1st of April we will have within social care a 0 to 25 service. At this point in time, what happens is at 16 we work in the same building now as the adult learning disability services. So at 16 we notify them of the cohort of children who will be rising 18 within the next 2 years. That's quite important. We have quarterly meetings with them now to look at these young people. Again, to look at where they are, look at the financial implications for those young people as they get older. At 17 and a half, an adult social worker will be allocated and will work alongside the children's social worker to complete the Care Act assessment. So there'll be a joint assessment looking at planning so that once they've completed that assessment again, that will then go to the adults resource panel to look at the needs of that young person when they reach 18. And so the goal behind this obviously is that at 18 there is a very smooth transition. As you know, there's always been challenges around transition into adulthood, and so that's the way we have been working. Come April, it'll be one service, so it's going to be much easier for that to happen. But we're working quite well, and although I would have to say that there are issues about the number of young people as well coming through, and for adults to move some of those young people on as well. So in children, for example, we still have a few 18-year-olds, but we will hang on to them, we won't close them until that handover is achieved. So that's how we're working at the moment. But as I say, the goal is to have a proper full functioning 0 to 25 service, so you have that, you don't have a cliff edge for those young people.
Excellent. Okay, and next?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. I wondered how you evaluate the parents and young people's appreciation of what they are being offered.
Good question. We actually asked an independent body to contact every parent who had had a new plan each year for the first 3 years of the reform. So there's a report on each of those, and they show increasing satisfaction over those 3 years. If they're not on the local offer, the first 2 I know are, but the final year might not be up on there yet, but they should be there. So those reports are there. We also do ask parents to complete an online survey with varying success that they ever complete that. But I understand why they've just been through a lengthy process. Not everyone wants to do that. So we found actually phoning people was the only way to actually, get that to happen really. So we do have that data from the first 3 years. We won't be continuing that though because it's an expensive thing to do. We wanted that data to improve the process as much as we can until it's embedded. But we've got our online surveys there. And also there's the local offer feedback, of course.
Yes.
But it's something that we have to keep encouraging people to do. They don't always want to tell us when it's gone well. They want to do it very, very loudly.
Thanks, Esther.
My second question was, it was about the number of hours that the plan guarantees for a school.
Okay. Well, what we do is, I mean, Helen will know this, she's got a lot of plans in her school. When we've written a plan, we've written a provision, we have something called a ready reckoner, and we literally cost out the packages of support that we think the young person needs. So it could be so many hours of TA support, so many hours of specialist teaching, so many hours of speech and language provision, whatever it happens to be. And we cost that, and then we look at the band of funding in mainstream that equates to. So that's the way we do it. And all of that's transparent with parents. We actually put the funding on our plans. Most authorities don't. So we actually put on there, this is exactly what funding is available for your child. Now that can cause arguments, but it also gives you transparency. So, you know, I don't know what Helen thinks about that, but I think it's actually better.
And then we plan it out, and we're trying to be very transparent in exactly what we're spending that money on, and really break it down, feeding the £6,000 that we put in from the school.
Because every school has to put in money from their budget.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. So there is still a top-up from the school?
Yes, the school puts in 6,000, the first 6,000 if it's a mainstream school, and then the authority top up from the high needs block, depending on where the funding fits in the balance.
Thank you.
Could I just answer?
I'm just going to ask a question on the back of that, if I may. And that is, okay, so that's the funding. While we're on that, what would happen if my child needed speech and language therapy? But that is, you know, more of a health, you know. So how does the budget work? You know, so you've got the top-ups, you explain that from the client or the pupil perspective. But then what happens behind the scenes between, have we got poor budgets between the CCG and the council? You know, what kind of shape is that really?
Would you talk about that one?
All the CCG for health.
If I could say a bit about it.
Panel
weekly. I attend the panel weekly for health, and I'm really clear about what a health need is. And sometimes speech and language is a health need. For example, if you've got difficulty swallowing, that could be deemed as a health need. And we will appropriate any of our services that we have going in from health that are either universal or specialist that we're already commissioning. Those services are already going in there. We expect an individual health plan to be undertaken between the family and the school to ensure those services are in there. But occasionally we'll have things that we're not commissioning. We might have a gap of something that's come up that's extraordinary to what we've already got, and we will then put that in. We will fund that element.
Okay.
And that's agreed at that time.
And that's from the health budget. Now, okay, we've mentioned looked after children. That's an area I'm familiar with because I'm also an adoptive mum. And I'm just thinking now, you know, because obviously these things have trends, don't they? You know, professionalisms have trends, and the trend now is an acknowledgement that when you come, you know, when you've been in care, it's the stuff that happened before you go into care, which is swirling about. So people want to have, you know, therapeutic support. You know, when basically they get settled, they've got a home, they're in school, they've got great support at school, but then the lid's slightly coming off. So that what you have to do is then say, right, we need some therapeutic support. Now that, for me, you know, may be within the health expertise rather than the social care expertise. So does it work? Do you know what I mean? You've got your... It's hard to say, you know...
Do you mean if a child's within an EHCP or not?
Well, within one, I would have thought that one would have thought that the whole idea of having these EHC plans is that you locate it quickly, you get the, you know, you've already explained the mechanism by getting the support around that child. So what I'm trying to test now before I start speaking to people is that there are no obvious blockages, you know, between health and social care in terms of funding.
I'll just say a little bit about that and about CAMS. Again, we commission CCG for anybody who's locally within our area. We're fortunate here. We've got South London and Maudsley CAMS service here. So for those that are locally, fine. They will, and in fact there are lower thresholds, I believe, aren't there, Shirley, for if you're a looked after child, because we recognise them as some of our more vulnerable children, young people, certainly in terms of their emotional development.
so that they can access those services. Now, if they're placed out of borough, obviously, for us in health and clinical commissioning group, it's also the same as for local authorities. We remain to be the responsible commissioner for that young person.
So we are the responsible commissioner.
For health, if we're a looked after child, if there's a Southwark child and there was one of our GP originate from Southwark, then we remain the responsible commissioner for their health, regardless of where they are. Now, their primary care, they'll be registered to a GP,
Of course,
but it is CAMS is the usual thing that comes up, and we would fund local CAMS if needed. They tend to be in blocks, so there's no barrier there. Sometimes I think there's a perception about how that's, but we would fund that as a responsible commissioner.
Do we operate? I mean, there's it's a debate that's maybe we don't need this. But a big debate now is whether one would need, when you have your corporate parenting body, whether you would have, like you've got your virtual head, whether you would need a similar thing on the health side.
We do have similar things, really, because we have a designated doctor for the children, and a designated nurse who looks after children, who are responsible for looking at the health needs of all our looked after children, regardless of where they're placed within the country.
Yes.
And Kelly from
CAMS, they work specifically with looked after children, and they will liaise with local CAMS if a child is placed outside of the borough.
Okay, so that works then. So we know that works, and that basically, if a child, which is quite likely, because a lot of our children are placed outside of borough, then they, get that support quite quickly, and there's no problem about budgets or it's just identified and.
No, often it's more of a perception. I've done the designated looked after children's nurse role previously, and sometimes it's about other areas in the country, about people's perception that you wouldn't be funding that, but we do fund that. We understand we're the responsible commissioner regardless of where they're placed, and CAMS is the most common request that comes up.
Okay, I mean, we sit on the corporate board and it seems to be quite good there, but we were just wondering, how we would test that. Okay, well, we're nearly at the end.
I just wanted to make a point. In terms of you as local authority, if I'm understanding you express your provision in terms of banding and sums of money. I suppose you probably would notice that, I suppose if a parent wanted to challenge that, and for a good advocacy, they would always be saying to you, the number of hours must be quantified, specific and detailed. And
It is in the plan.
Okay, so you actually do put the number of hours?
Yes, we do. In the plan, the number of hours, or we would say they have to have this specific programme delivered in a particular way.
Right. I guess you get parents saying, actually, we want to see the numbers of hours.
Sometimes, yeah. But actually, we do quite a few mediations with parents.
Okay.
Most of the mediations we do, that's proper formal mediation.
Okay.
Don't go to tribunal.
All right.
So we do have some tribunals over hours. There always will be. I mean, I've got one at the moment, for example, that wants everything in the special school specified. That would be quite unusual. Yeah. So, you get them, but they want every single hour of every minute, every day of the week they're trying to get in. And that does happen, but usually we can resolve things with families. Okay. But, you always get something.
Okay. Are there no further questions? Okay. Are there any final pointers that you wanted to leave us with before we wind up this session? And would you be up for coming again after we've looked at the some of the?
Just one thing I didn't mention, which is we commissioned an e-learning module training for professionals across the team, and it's around working with SEND really and understanding SEND to be used as a form of induction for all professionals that come into the borough will be able to access it.
Okay.
And it will cover understanding the SEND, completing the HCPs and focusing on outcomes for children and co-production of the team. We've been working on it for well over a year, and we're hoping we're going to be on the home stretch. But again, because it will enable professionals throughout the borough to be able to access it and understand what SEND is about.
Okay, well that's really useful.
Could I just ask, is something similar available for the parents and children?
We we discussed this actually when we started looking at creating the modules, whether it could be open to parents. And at the moment, we've focused very much on the professionals. At the moment, we've got financial constraints around it, but it doesn't mean to say that, because it's quite simple and straightforward in many ways. So it may well be. Many parents may well be able to access it if we look at adding it somewhere like the local offer. But it hasn't been specifically designed for parents at this point. But who knows, if it's very successful and funding is available in the future, we could try and create one.
Just to reassure you, Council for Disabled Children have things for parents, e-learning, and there's a number of courses that SciAS run as well that they've done with parents. So there is quite a lot out there. If you look on the local offer about training families, there is quite a bit.
Excellent. Okay, any more final points from our speakers? Okay, in which case I just wanted to say thank you, Nina, Yvonne, Shirley, Bridget, Kate, Helen and Sunil for your time. We'll see you again, and if it's all right, in between now and our review, we may be in touch, but hopefully we'll have some good information and case studies to share. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, we've only got a few minutes left now to look at the work plan, and we've managed to move that ahead, so take it away, Julie.
Okay, I think we might have to rejig some of the work plan for the 6th of February to take on board, I think, decisions about follow-up. So that might mean inviting the Regional Schools Commissioner to come along on the 6th of February to look at the admissions.
Yeah.
So the next major thing...
Could we add exclusions to that? So admissions and exclusions.
Okay.
That comes off Catherine.
Okay.
They said they could try and look at it in sort of whether by February they might have done a little bit of work around enrolment and exams put in for the best guess at what might happen.
Okay. Sounds good.
I mean, there's a definition of exclusion, so there is some detail on exclusion,
I've read
but that's
and it's very
to
worrying.
being asked to leave.
Okay.
It's very worrying.
Yeah.
And that's why I wondered if we could include it.
Okay. So you're talking about exclusions in a broad sense?
Yeah, children aren't completing their education
Okay.
in the place.
No, I mean where schools exclude a child.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is a different thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair enough. I was roughly in line with that.
Okay.
Okay. So formal and informal exclusions, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So the next major item is after our next formal meeting. So that's scrutiny in a day. So the plan is to hold it in the library, Peckham Library, which the Youth Council seemed to think would work well. The worker I spoke to. Apparently the young people, when they were asked, they suggested the town hall or school. But he seemed to think that the library would work well. So
where in the library? Because the air conditioning at the top by the pods just doesn't work. I went to an event there and the air conditioning was dripping and it was sweltering. I just say it's not with my bit.
Yeah, so there's 2 pods. We've got pod 1 all day and pod 2 in the afternoon.
One wasn't good. I mean, it might be fine in pod 1. It's right at the top, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll go and check it.
We're going to have a visit.
Yeah, we'll test the
I know, it was fancy, wasn't it? Yeah. In practice, like, on paper it looks amazing and then you think,
Was it just the temperature?
Yeah.
There was a change of weather though when we did that.
Yeah, it was probably quite cold in February, so it might be checking up the heating, I guess. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll try and make sure that it's still a good temperature. It's important. So the content we've got would be to start with Scotland's experience of treating violence as a public health issue.
Have you got the Ladies of Violence from Scotland? She's brilliant.
Okay.
The violence, she is and she's brilliant advocate for early years intervention. And she's really, I've seen her. I went to the annual the Association of childminders and nursery people, and she spoke, and she's fantastic.
Okay.
It is her.
Okay, right. Well, at the moment we haven't booked anybody definitively for that section, so if you give me her name, I will contact her. Yeah.
What day is this on, by the
The
way?
15th of February.
So we've got the meet on the 6th of February.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then this on the 15th of February, which will mean that we'll need to actually, the idea of scrutiny today is you write the report up quite quickly, but we would need to get it to go to OSC, we need to agree it by email, but hopefully that won't be a problem. Yeah, so she'll be hopefully we'll get the recommended person from Catherine to give a keynote. Yep, that great lady from Scotland. And then there'll be an overview here, probably from Caroline Thwaites, on Southwark Council's work, an update on that. Then we'll invite somebody from them to talk about the Mayor's strategy. Then the Youth Council are lined up to do a presentation on their work because it's their key theme is knife crime. Then we'll have an audience discussion, and then the workshops that we've got penciled in are ones on girls' violence and domestic abuse and the links of child sexual exploitation. Because that was quite a key theme that came up. Really, these themes came really up in the scope of document and the discussion at the last meeting. So the links with gangs and knife crime, preventative work with at-risk young people, so that's particularly young people in care and children in need, and then promoting healthy relationships, looking at anti-bullying work and restorative justice. I'm not sure we'll be able to fit both of those in, but one of those maybe.
Yeah, that will definitely be on there.
Yeah, well they are, I think, the lead for the Southwark Council. So yeah, yeah, I mean definitely we ought to, yeah.
Well, the 15th is there. What day is that week then?
It's a weekday.
But what time is it?
So it's penciled in for 10:30 until 5 o'clock.
Is that no good?
I mean, I would just have to send my apologies, but it's just to be aware.
Okay.
Do you think we should?
Well, the reason for going for the half term was because of the
half term,
yeah, it's half term.
So the kids.
Yeah, so the young people can come. Yeah. Would that make it easier for teachers?
Yeah.
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 Take the holiday. So is that all right then?
I think it is my half term because I don't think my school's half term. But anyway, it's just.
Should be.
You may not get so many head teachers coming before it's
Okay. That was based on Southwark's website. Are you getting solace in it? We certainly could.
Yeah.
I think to do the girls' violence, that sounds good. Yeah. So.
Good thinking.
I could ask Rada about the charter as well. Yeah.
Very good. 2 half 10. Okay. Is that it then?
And venue to be confirmed.
Well, the
library. Yeah.
And could I ask that the invitations go out to both dioceses early?
Yeah.
It's time to get their support, please.
Sure.
Of course, yeah. Did we not do that last time?
No, it was very last moment.
Oh, was it? Okay. Crikey. We'll make sure.
Are you looking to finalise the agenda early in the new year? So they've got 6 weeks' notice.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to start. Yeah. I mean, I think over the next few weeks. Right. Yeah. I mean, we could send out early invitations now.
I would do. Well,
yeah.
I'll do the themes so they get their diary because these people. Especially if it's half term, the officers may want on holiday themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's worked out quite well, isn't it? So as soon as we get the okay.
I think we could do like a provisional one. Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
Just to get these in the diary. Yeah. Yeah. Just a paragraph.
Elaine.
Yes, I know her. She's very good. Yeah. Yeah. She might be really good for this.
She deals with the police neighbourhood.
Yeah. Yeah, she did the hate crimes, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's very good at that.
Okay. Is that it?
I think so.
Right, any last words? Home!
So the 6th is going to be admissions again with Dominic Harrington.
Yeah.
If he can come, he said he would try and make it up very
Yeah, get all your questions in advance. Catherine, you can do a head-to-head so I can make it up to you for shutting you down. Thank you very much, everyone.